verse is Exodus chapter 10, verse 21 to 23. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Stretch out your hand toward the sky, so that darkness spreads over Egypt, darkness that can be felt." So Moses stretched out his hand toward the sky, and total darkness covered all Egypt for 3 days. No one could see anyone else or move about for 3 days. Yet all the Israelites had light in the places where they lived.
Thank you so much, Susie, for today's reading. And it introduces this third week so well in Lent together. So far, we've looked at creation. Our living God wanted to share his light, his life, his love that he knew with us. He's made us in his image. He's made creation as a home to enjoy, to walk with him forever, to enjoy that life and love, and to know who we are and to walk with him. But then week 2 we saw, that sounded amazing, but we've seen what's made it all go wrong, because life isn't like that now. It's full of pain and suffering and death and blame, division, murder, selfishness, and we're all, the Bible says, all guilty of that. What is it? It's sin. Wanting God dead, wanting to be God of our lives. You might be thinking, well, what's God's answer to that then? If that's what he wanted in the beginning and that's what he's shown us at the start of the Bible, but then almost straight away it all goes wrong and we're to blame. We've done all these things and brought death and sin and illness into the world and suffering and pain. And still 6,000, 8,000 years after that event in the garden that we talked about, the world is still staggering around us, isn't it? It's still reeling. Is there an answer to all of this? And each generation, each lot of children that grow up as adults seem to ask that question. What's the answer to all this? How do I understand all this pain and suffering and death I see around me and that I taste myself, and coming up with all sorts of different answers? What is God's answer? Well, his answer might shock you, might surprise you, because everyone, including Christians sometimes, including me, underestimate God's answer. We see it as too little. But you see, Jesus has been preparing a place right from the beginning, right from when we sinned, first of all, in Adam and Eve. A place that's still going to show off his light, his love, his glory, his life, where that can still be seen. I remember I went to India a couple of years ago, and everywhere around one of our friends' houses was dark one night, and he took us up onto his roof and away up in the mountains, so high up, it was like pitch black all the way up. And then there's this city up on this mountain called Missouri, and there the lights were all on. And it was quite spooky. It was like this city, it looked like it was hovering in the sky. And our friend who's a Christian said it's like heaven. It's like the new heavens and new earth. But it's an amazing picture when the rest of the world all around that town and city was all in darkness. There was a place where the lights were still on. What is this place that Jesus has been preparing? The place where the lights are still on, the place where the light of God is still enjoyed, like back in Genesis. Where is that? Church. Church is God's answer for the world. And that's why it might shock you. You might think, what, go into that sort of old dusty building? No, we're not talking about a building. We're talking about a group of people who gather together. Like in our reading today, those Israelites back in Egypt, the rest of the world around them was in thick darkness. What horrible 3 days of thick darkness where you couldn't see anyone else. You couldn't enjoy the company of anyone else. You couldn't even see your own hands in front of your face. Here in Wales, we got a place called the Big Pit. It's an old mine that's shut down, but they've opened it up to give you a taste of what it was like to be a miner. And you can go down there, and it's pretty dark anyway. They've got some lights on so you can see where you're going. But there's one point they get to, and they say, we're going to turn the lights off now. And there's literally no light. You can wave your hand in front of your face. You can't see a thing. If you didn't touch your nose, you wouldn't know anything was there. Imagine living a life like that, in that sort of darkness, tripping over, smashing your head, getting bruised and cut, constantly knocking into things, getting frustrated and angry because you can't understand or see anything. Well, Jesus says that's what life outside of his church, his people, is like. And he showed it in Egypt thousands of years ago. A darkness that can be felt. Maybe you can feel some of the darkness gnawing at your heart. And you wonder, what is going on around me? Well, there is one place where the light still shines. And that is church. This group of people, when all the world around them was in the dark, the sun was switched off, the moon didn't shine, no stars, no light at all. In that camp, in that settlement, in that gathering of Jesus' people, there was light. Can you imagine that? The difference. We use that phrase, don't we? It's like the difference between night and day. That's what we say. We use that phrase still now in our language, don't we? Where does it come from? Could it possibly come from the Bible here, from Jesus? It's like the difference between night and day. Living with Jesus in his church, in his community that he's building, where the lights are still on, someone is still home, there is a warm fire, there's comfort, there's joy, there's peace, there's light, there's love. You can sit down and be understood. You can be guided and helped. Jesus is pointing out this picture. To live without him is to live in total darkness, and then to carry on in total darkness forever, which is hell itself. But to be joined with him and his church is to know his light. Like God spoke, let there be light. The whole universe was filled with light. There's darkness all around. Where does that light still shine? In church. I wonder if you've seen church like that. I said before, we all underestimate it. Even Christians who've been Christians for a long time, we forget that's how seriously Jesus takes his people, his church. That is where the light still shines. Remember, Jesus says, I am the light of the world. Anyone who believes in me will never walk in darkness. I'll turn the lights on in their life. They'll be able to understand where they're going and see where they're going and understand their lives and what's going on, and I'll help them. Be like coming home, sitting where they belong with me in church, Jesus says. But Jesus also says about the church, you are the light of the world. Because you have my light in you, Jesus says, you're like the light of the world too. You can spread the light, shine like stars, Jesus says, out to the world. As Christians, have we taken church that seriously like Jesus does? What an amazing privilege, isn't it? To shine his light out into the dark world. If you're not a Christian, maybe you've just written church off. I'm not going to that building. I don't like Christians, whatever it might be. Yeah, maybe so. But it's the only place where the light is still on, where you can see who you are and enjoy the light of Jesus for yourself. Join with Jesus and his people. Join his church if you haven't already. Trust in him and know him shining the light in your heart. And if you already have and you're part of church, what an incredible mission, what an amazing people we're meant to be. Let's shine out Jesus' light into this dark world. God bless. See you soon.